you going and all.
I just started.
Okay. So I'm not getting it yet. Nope, I'm not showing live.
It's still spinning.
Ah.
Sorry, live chat is currently unavailable.
What?
That's what it says. No, live chat is not available. Restore chat. What does that mean? There, live chat's back. I don't know why it wasn't there. Okay then. It's still on private.
Oh, that's why I'm not getting it.
I changed the privacy.
Okay, well, as long as you know what the issue is.
Yeah. Where is that? Private. I changed it to public. Apparently that didn't take. I had to click save. That was the problem, maybe?
Maybe. I don't know.
All right, let's try that again. Well, now it's public.
There we go.
All right.
Okay.
Whew. Boy, I tell you, you do a test and everything gets all mucked up. And since I didn't send an invitation to anybody, nobody could get it. And now we have chat back. Alrighty then. Yep, people are popping in. On time! Hi, Violet! I had one of those moments where I thought I changed it from private to public, and apparently it didn't take. So I had to do it again. I think it's going to be working this week, though. We did a couple of tests to make sure. Aaron Jones says hello. Hi, Aaron.
Well, it's looking pretty good so far. I just wish we could do higher resolution, but then that would take a new computer.
Yeah. Dan says, hey, everybody, glad to see you back. Yes, we are too. It was very frustrating last time.
Yeah, I think we about said hello to Jonathan, and that was about the end of it. Yeah.
And then it was like, poof.
Gone.
Everything was gone. It's like, man, that sucked. So, but we have survived. And we are back up and running. And now we can talk to everybody again. So, it's all good. We're happy. We missed it. We actually really did miss it. Charlotte G says, hi everyone, so excited to have a live this week. Yes, we are as well. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Darlene says hello. Hi, Darlene. Yay, we have our people back.
Yep.
So awesome sauce. Who came up with that? I don't know.
I don't know, but I decided it was your cranberry sauce. That's what awesome sauce is.
Well, that's true. My cranberry sauce is pretty awesome. We're going to have our turkey dinner for winter solstice coming up next week. Vanessa V says hi. Hi, Vanessa V. So yeah, we had an attempt to rescue a bird yesterday, but the bird was too injured, so my granddaughter went and picked it up from a neighbor's house that was freaking out about it, and we did what we could to try and help the poor little thing, but it passed away this morning, so life and death, it happens. Sheila says, hi, glad to be here and glad you're here. Yes, thank you, Sheila. And Arcanum says, hey, I do look forward to these a lot. So much great information. Yes, and we look forward to them as well. It's sort of like one of the highlights of our week.
Yes, it is.
We enjoy communicating with people. It's nice to participate in a wider conversation out there. So yes, absolutely. Ah. So what do we want to talk about today? We're ready for a topic. Come on and pick our brains. Catherine says, hi, glad I made it here. Hi, Catherine. Moonfire Dawn says, hello, welcome back. Thank you, Moonfire.
I am just going to go straighten those candles up. I keep forgetting to do it, and then I notice them every time.
Okay. Gonna show yourself off. Straighten
yeah,
up.
Well, nothing to show
Straighten
off,
up those candles. Michael says, hello all. Hi, Michael. Ian is going to be fixing candles behind my head.
Well, it's just I keep looking at them and they keep bothering me.
Yep.
Sorry.
It's okay. We had a bit of a leak in our temple, but it seems to be getting better. That was sort of a surprise when we came in. That was 2 weeks ago that we started to notice it.
I think that tarp helped a lot.
I think it did. So Arcane says, always wondered if pixie dust is a real thing. I think it is. Well, I mean, personally speaking, I don't have glitter in my house, but apparently upon close examination for a skin test, I had glitter between my toes. And so, I don't know. I don't know where it came from. So, it does seem like it might be a real thing. Ruth says, hi all. Hi, Ruth. Yeah, so it's a weird thing.
I'm noticing your thing, the colors aren't showing up on the camera. It's looking black and white on my computer.
Oh, it's showing up on mine.
Is it? Yeah.
Yep.
I think we're streaming it and everything else. Yeah.
Cool. And I said hi to Ruth. I think, yes, I did. Takes us a while to get back in the groove. Yes, in the groove.
Do we have a groove?
I don't know. We have several grooves, I think.
Okay.
We have different specialties and different experiences, and then they merge together at some point in some way that works for us. So
Hopefully they stay as a groove and don't turn into a rut.
right, we want grooves, not ruts. Ruth says, laugh out loud. Yes, you did. I did say hi to her. Angela says, blessings all. Hi, Angela. Thank you for joining us. But yes. I mean, there's so many mysteries out there and things that we don't understand. It's pretty fascinating. The farther back in time they can look, it's kind of interesting. Michael says, during your paranormal investigations, did you ever run into spirits that were preventing other spirits from communicating? Well, that's a good question. And I actually did run into one situation, which I never got to resolve, where there was a spirit that was hiding from another spirit in the same building. And it was a jail, the old jail here in town. And I went up to the jail, and it was like, I usually, the way I structure these things, I do a walkthrough first to see what's happening and get an idea of what I'm facing and what I need to bring and so forth before I go in and take care of the situation. Because I like to be prepared instead of having to do it all, seat of my pants kind of stuff. And so we were up there, and there was a guy who had been in the jail cell. It wasn't used as a jail at that point. It was used as storage and file folders and stuff, but they still had a cell left over. And inside the cell, there were like all these file cabinets, and someone had put a picture of a cat on this thing. And I saw this cat poster, and was immediately angry and thought, well, that's interesting because I like cats. And I realized there was a spirit of a man who had tried to get out of jail by killing himself. He'd actually hung himself in the cell, and it hadn't worked. And every time he saw that happy picture, it made him mad. And then down the hallway, someone had noticed a change in temperature, so I walked down the hall and actually had the spirit that was there walk right through my body, which was very interesting because it's a strange sensation. It's a weird kind of cold, and when you have a spirit that passes right through you. But it was pretty clear that he was trying to stay away from the angry guy who had hung himself and couldn't get out of jail. But we never got to go back. We went back at the appointed time and no one showed up with the key. And that was kind of annoying. And I've not been able to get back in. But so I have had at least that. So Angela says, Siofra and Ian and chat, I got a new crystal statue. So excited. It's a Gaia made of rose quartz. Sounds nice. I like Gaia statues. They're always fun. Rose quartz is always a good stone. Violet says, Hellier is a town. They made a 2-season documentary series of paranormal researchers on a trail on Prime. Did you see it yet? No, I haven't seen that, I don't think. I'm trying to remember. I've watched a number of different paranormal shows, but probably not. Jennifer S. says, good afternoon. Hi, Jennifer. Vanessa V says, so I'm sick with a cold right now, so I just thought a random question. Are there any witchy things to do while sick? Taking care of yourself. That is the best witchy thing you can do. You can play with certain crystals to try and help get more in touch with your body and figure out what you can do to help yourself. Take a break. I mean, that's just as important as anything else. Sometimes I end up with experiences when I'm sick. I do a lot of inner working, I think, when I'm in that kind of a state, because I was sick the other day, and it's just like accepting the fact that I have no energy, and I'm just going to be sitting here for a period of time and letting my body be, and then random thoughts and ideas and stuff like that pop up, feelings and emotions and that kind of thing. My son, whenever he got sick, got very philosophical. When he was little, he would ask the most amazing questions like, where do we go when we die? And what does a spirit look like? And all this other stuff. So, it can be an interesting time to sort of sit with yourself. Violet says, they did a sweet invocation to Pan at the end. They were in a cave in Hellier. It was a fun watch for me. Slow to watch, but fun on the trail chasing down a mystery. Okay. Angela says, Violet, hugs. Violet says, Angela. Angela says, how are you, Violet? Michael says, how did you feel his emotions? Okay, the spirit that walked through me, usually that's what I do sense with ghosts and stuff, is their feelings. And it's sort of hard to describe, but yes, I definitely felt both of them, the one that was angry and the one that was hiding from the one that was angry. And as an empath, that's sort of one of the main abilities I use when I'm doing my paranormal investigations. And the one I was supposed to do that we talked about a couple weeks ago still hasn't happened. It's now been postponed twice, once by a storm, and I'm not sure what postponed it the second time. She said, we were all on the floor, and I don't know what that meant. So we need to reschedule, and I'm like, okay. Sounds like a plan. We'll definitely reschedule. So, Violet says, I caught a bug, Angela, and recovering is slow. That's right, I remember hearing about that, Violet. Sorry you were sick. Michael says, bummer. Thank you, Siofra. You're welcome. Angela says, healings and hugs, Violet. Being sick is no fun. Arcane says, I used to see spirits as a child, very strongly, just as real as seeing living people. Only they could walk right through walls or even look exactly like someone else. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's unusual to see them that realistic looking.
Right. I mean, I've seen them realistically on occasion, but not most of the time. I don't even remember seeing them that clearly when I was a kid, except a few occasions where they manifested themselves. Like when I saw Moida in the garage in Chicago when we were having our water pump or whatever it was changed out in our car on the lift, which was interesting. Angela says, healing candles, I always keep them pre-charged, restful meditation and music. Yeah, Healing candles are always good to have floating around, especially if you're sick.
Well, a good thing is actually you can charge up the food you're eating to help you feel better before you eat it. Just focus on it a little bit and put your willpower into it that food is going to help banish your illness, and then take it in Eucharistically. And you can do that with food and drink, cup of coffee, whatever it is you have, and assist your own healing in that fashion if you have enough energy to do it.
I'm going to say it depends on how sick you are.
Well, yeah, sometimes you're sick enough and you don't have the energy to really do it, so it depends on where you're at. Yeah.
But if you have a friend, you can have them charge it up for you maybe. Or ask someone to do some distance Reiki on you. That can help. Michael says, as far as black orbs, what's your take on those? There is a person that has recorded black orbs entering his body as he sleeps, causing him to cough and wake up. He has requested help by the church, but they didn't help too much. He is starting to look for help elsewhere. I haven't heard about that, but that sounds interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be a manifestation of energetic thought forms or a being or something like that that's being caught, especially if it has an immediate response.
There's something interesting that happened to me, which is sort of vaguely related to this, not directly to the black orbs, but somebody was having a nightmare. So I came to wake her up, and I saw very clearly what was happening, and she was having a sock shoved down her throat. Only after she woke up, the sock was no longer there. So I thought that was very interesting. It was a nightmare thing, a nightmare scenario, obviously. I don't know why it came through that strongly. I've never seen a nightmare or anything before, not even my own. So those kind of things are interesting.
Yeah.
So sort of related to the black orbs in that,
Well, then it had a physical reaction.
Yeah.
I mean, I once saw my son had a nightmare that was visible to me and my husband at the time, who wasn't gifted in any way at all, so that was sort of interesting. But his nightmare was so vivid, and he's a projecting telepath or, I don't know, something like that. And we woke him up and he was awake, and I took him into the bedroom with me and had him in my bed sitting between us and watched the nightmare on the wall around us. And he had some really horrific looking creatures that were flying around. And fortunately that doesn't happen all the time, but that was very bizarre.
That's fascinating. I mean, it doesn't relate directly to black orbs, but the kind of idea of seeing something so realistically, I mean, when I woke her up, I honestly thought somehow she had got a sock jammed down her throat and she was choking on it, and her mouth was moving and she was trying to spit it out, and it was very clear what was going on. And I thought it was a real sock that had somehow happened, only it wasn't real at all. So,
at least not physical.
Yeah, so who knows? I don't know anything about black orbs. I don't have a guess on what that might be.
Yeah. Charlotte says, I find the stories you share on the paranormal so interesting. Could you perhaps tell us about one of your favorite experiences whilst conducting an investigation? I don't know. They're all so different. Each one of them. Let me give that some thought. I mean, I've seen so many different kinds of things and experienced so many different things. I've always been surprised at how varying reactions people have to the same kind of experience. Like the first real ghost that I knew, human ghost, was in a house in Saskatchewan. And, he walked the halls, turned the light on and off in the bathroom. I saw him once, and he was a white guy with an afro. It seemed pretty clear he died of an overdose of something, because he really didn't know he was dead, but I didn't know how to help him. But he wasn't dangerous or threatening or anything like that. And then after we left that house, no one was able to live in the house again because they were threatened by the fact that there was a ghost there and were freaking out. and that was interesting, that so much of the experiences that you might have with the paranormal are dependent upon what you bring to the table, how it activates your own emotional sensibilities and boundaries, and pushes your buttons, and heightens your expectations or your anxieties and your fears. So, well, I was kind of tickled. We did a local one here. There were two ghosts. One was a young woman, the other was a younger girl that had both been murdered in the same location at different times. And they had formed a bond with each other, so I had to cross them over at the same time. And that was interesting because we held hands standing in the middle of a room, and they invited me to come with them. So I thought that was interesting, that I got an invite to go along, which I politely declined, and so then they crossed over. And then there was another time where something happened that had never happened before. There was a local native woman here on her wedding day that was violated by pioneers, and she cursed the land that she died upon, and these people built a house and cut down the tree that she was under, and this house was built on top of it. And when I encountered her, and was finding out about it, she was showing me what happened and so forth, and she handed me a feather, and I'd never had a spirit hand me an object before, so that was unique. And I didn't know what it was for, but I took the feather, and then when I went back later, I realized that she had given me that feather to indicate that she was willing to let go of the curse that she had laid on the land. And so I used that imaginary feather or spirit feather or whatever, and put it in the ground to dissipate the curse. So that was interesting. So yeah, they're all so different. So Michael says maybe it's not meant to be as far as getting back to that location. Yeah, maybe not. I keep thinking about it every so often. I grew watching horror films in the 80s. How do I get rid of the fear that comes from preconceived notions?
And I know that one. I'll let you go ahead.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything about getting rid of it. It's just that I had a whole lot of it. Had a whole lot of it. Still do, trying to get rid of it. And the only thing that I've found that works for me is just pushing right through it. Doing what I'm going to do anyway without letting the fear bother me. I first investigate and see if there's any, think about it, and find out if there's any rational reason for the fear, and then if there's not, I try to push through it as best I can. But then that might be easier for me to say because I have panic all the time, and I'm having to just push through it constantly to continue surviving. So, that might be more of a me thing, but I've always just kind of pushed past them, and then once you get enough experience with whatever it is that gives you fear, you'll stop having the fear.
Because it's the unknown and the unexpected will generate a fear response in anybody, no matter what.
That's been one of my big ones. I had a lot of stuff a lot of my stuff was actually from Christianity. Is one of those kind of upbringings.
Yeah, I had that as well. And I think one of the other things that I did was to look at and acknowledge the fact that everything I thought I knew was decided by people who didn't know much to start with. So the source material, recognizing that the source material for information was probably not that accurate to start with, and then making a commitment to try and face things on their own turf, for what they were, without the expectations, and coloring the experience so much that I couldn't see what was happening in front of me. But it takes a lot of practice to do that.
Well, yeah, and even I had a problem even with books, with reading about the subject, because all the Christianity stuff would come up, and I'd feel all this blind fear for no reason, but I was rational enough to realize it was for no reason, and that reading that book wasn't going to hurt me, so I just pushed on through. But yeah, I had a real problem with books because of that preconceived notions and things on certain subjects, books that talked about certain subjects.
Yeah.
And we knew somebody who had a problem with robes.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
because of preconceived notions and things, even though she knew, had nothing to do with anything. It was just an internal thing. So yeah,
And
there's
someone
a
else
lot
with
of
black
that.
candles,
Yes,
freaking out about the black candles.
that wasn't her. Also.
No, that was a different person. That was
Okay.
the robes. The
Okay.
robes was one person. The black candles was another. And
Okay.
it was.
It's been a while.
Yeah,
but
it's been a while, but yes. Michael says, "Oh man, that seems like a horrible nightmare. Got you both. Thank you so much. Ever wonder what kind of power we have lying within us if our dreams can break through to reality?"
Yeah, it's kind of awesome and a little frightening. I'm still not sure about that. That one that I saw.
Yeah.
Why it happened then or manifested then or whatever, but yeah.
I mean, a lot of fiction, science fiction, and stuff like that explores the notion of, say, what would happen if everybody could read everybody's mind. And usually it ends quite badly because most people do not have a disciplined mind and think some pretty terrible things. And if everybody could hear and see everything that they thought, I mean, it's one of the reasons why it's probably good that not everybody can see thought forms, because it's very distracting.
A lot of times you just don't want to, because a lot of times they're not very pretty.
Yeah. And when I had that experience with the client a few weeks ago, when he was trying to get in my head and rummage around and discovered he couldn't and was kind of surprised, and I'm like, yeah, I make a commitment to not read people's minds on purpose as much as possible unless my safety is at risk. I'll read every driver on the road if I have to make sure that I know where they're going. But, I try not to intrude too much. But yeah, it's pretty fascinating, the limits we put on ourselves and what would happen if those limits were gone. But hopefully things are happening at the right speed. I don't know. Moonfire Dawn says, "I think I know the guy's videos. It's a manifestation that made his wife move out. I told him the spirit wasn't Catholic. He upset it with praying." Ah!
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing, is the assumption that whatever your religion or spiritual beliefs are going to be good for every spirit you meet, considering how many different religions there are around the planet and how long humans have been around. It's a really annoying assumption. And there are many spirits out there that aren't Christians, and someone starts praying at them with a Bible are going to get annoyed. And I don't blame them. I would get annoyed myself. Michael says, "Great question, Charlotte." Vanessa V says, "Oh, thanks, Angela, and I'm sorry you're sick too, Violet. Seems a lot of bugs going around." Yeah. Michael says, "Are there books we can get on crossing people over?" I have no idea. There probably are a bunch of books.
There probably are, but I haven't.
But I don't know what they say in them and whether I would think they were a good idea. My approach to crossing spirits over is to, since I can open up the portal between the worlds and I can call the spirits on the other side that are there for that particular being, regardless of their religion. Like with the Native American guy I found, his ancestors and his tribe came to collect him. Once a human spirit sees that light and sees the place that they've been expecting to go on the other side, there's no resistance. So I've never actually encountered a situation where I've tried to force a spirit to cross over or had a reluctant spirit, because most of them are reluctant to start with because of fear. They don't know for sure what's on the other side. But when they can see what's on the other side and they can feel that acceptance and total love energy coming from there, then the fear dissipates and it's gone, and then they can move on. So figuring out what it is they need to say before they leave, if they have something left undone or what have you. And empathy goes a long way in helping them. So people have asked sometimes how you can do it if you can't open up a portal like I can. And I've often talked about the idea of using a candle and lighting a candle and talking about the flame being the light entry into the other side, and just, talk the spirit through the process that you're going to see a light, and the light is comforting and loving. There's nothing for you to fear. And then, say something like, I call I call the spirits and your loved ones that are waiting for you on the other side to come. And I think that that could probably work. But I don't know, since I can't do it that way because I do it different. But that's an idea. But yeah. So Arcane says, oh yes, I've had quite a few unusual, unbelievable experiences with the paranormal, actually. Michael says, does all these experiences you have had take away your fear of the death, if you have any? Yeah. I mean, I tried crossing over apparently once a few years back. I went into the light like 3 times, and they kept bringing me back and told me they couldn't bring me back again, so I had to choose to stay. But it was very calm and relaxing, and I wasn't in the least bit afraid. It was all beautiful and sparkly and pretty and interesting and fascinating and all this other stuff.
I've got to say, I don't have any fear of dying itself and leaving this world and not leaving, legacy behind or something. All that kind of stuff doesn't bother me, but what I do fear is, since I don't know how I'm going to die, the pain that might be associated with it. I don't have a fear of dying, but I have a fear of dying painfully.
I think that's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Michael says, me too, Ian and Siofra, that's exactly what I'm going through. Yeah, I came from a Southern Baptist background. I hear you, Siofra, you guys are describing my situation. Yeah. And all those unconscious programs, they can be very difficult to get out. Joy says, I have panic just about every morning upon awakening. I guess I'm still afraid for what the day will bring. Michael says, never thought of it that way. I agree, hopefully. Arcane says, I've never seen a thought form. Sounds interesting. Cool. Well, depends on the thought form.
Yeah, there's 2 types. There's a regular thought form, which is mental, and there's an astral aspect. But the couple of thought forms I've seen have been appropriate. Like, I once saw a thought form for anger. Somebody sent some anger at me, not on purpose, I don't think. But I saw it, and it was like these little sharp triangles aiming at me to try to do me some injury. And I'm sure it was just somebody's thought form. It wasn't
like stab, stab, stab.
It wasn't anybody I know, for one thing. And yeah, but that's exactly it. The actual thought forms will look usually appropriate for what they're aimed at. So, if you get little lovey thought forms, that's what they are. If they look like little lovey thought forms, if they look like little angry ones, that's what they are.
Yeah, they definitely don't hide their nature. That's the thing, is they're just all out there if you can see them.
It's only been a couple of times I've seen thought forms clearly as such.
So Vanessa V says, what's your opinion on magnets, like for healing and such? Well, I think that there is some amount of theory involved in it, but I'm not sure how valid the theory is. I mean, we do have an electromagnetic field that we create because of the fact that we have electricity running through our nerves and so forth. So magnets would affect us. And some people might be more sensitive to them than others. And so I don't know. I mean, I met a woman once in my massage practice who had some pretty nasty arthritis in her thumb that was hurting her a lot. And she decided she couldn't afford to get those fancy magnets. So she got a bunch of refrigerator magnets and she taped them on her thumb, and it felt better. Now, whether it was the magnets that did it, her belief that the magnets would do it, or or something else, it's hard for me to know.
I will tell you one thing: the refrigerator magnets are a lot weaker than the magnets they use for that. And also, there is some esoteric validity to that. I haven't decided whether physical magnets actually help or not myself. But there's a lot of healing you can do with the magnetic fluid, which derives from the water element, and you can do anything that is an excess in the body, like an inflammation or anything like that. Bringing the magnetic fluid in will slow down the excessive movement and things. Like, I have allergies, and that's an overreaction to things. So I've been trying that kind of thing lately to try to help with those sort of things. So the magnetic fluid can help when it's used esoterically. And like I say, I'm not sure about the magnets. I think it seems reasonable that they might do some good for the proper conditions. But yeah, I have no real opinion on that one. But I know esoterically magnetism is very healing.
So Michael says, very comforting to hear. I'm working on my fears. I fear of a painful death too. And me too, Joy. Arcane says, that was a late reply to Ian on seeing spirits very physically being unusual. Well, that's the nature of this particular kind of forum, isn't it?
Yep.
We talk, and then we wait for comments, and then a bunch of people think of things to ask at the same time, and then we have to go one at a time. So,
well, hey,
it's delayed, but it's interesting because sometimes they sort of dovetail back on each other. And
well, yeah, and it's enjoyable being able to answer a question as fully as we can at the moment, you know, without feeling rushed and having to skip past stuff to get to the next question. So, yeah, I kind of like their way of doing it because it's a lot more thorough.
Well, and sometimes it has some very intense moments. We've had those times when someone's asked a pretty serious question, and I've been able to potentially help somebody through a rough patch. And we appreciate that as well. Definitely. Michael says, I love this platform. Thanks. We like it too.
Yep.
I understand it's not common. And that's the way it is. We didn't know what we were doing, so
well, you know,
we didn't get pushed into a slot.
It's kind of not I mean, it's kind of in a way a good thing that we don't have 5,000 people on our chat all simultaneously, because I don't know what we would do with that. So a smaller amount of people is better for the moment anyway, for sure.
Yep. Arcane says, you talked to Telekinesis briefly before. Yes, I did. Joy says, I have some magnets. I don't know if they help with anything, but my cat was aware of the field it created because he reacted to it. I definitely react to large magnets. We were at one of these places like, mystery spot kind of thing. And I think that was the one down in Santa Cruz. And I was absolutely going out of my mind because I could feel all these fighting magnetic fields, and I knew that they had buried a pile of magnets in the ground. And I kept moving around, and I actually found the place where all of them canceled out, and that was the only place I could stand and feel comfortable.
Animals are very sensitive. A lot of times make me wonder what's going on in their heads.
Well, and
especially
magnetism is actually one of the ways that animals get around and stuff like that. So, so a lot of animals have got magnetite in their brain in order to be able to read magnetic fields
like
around
birds.
The planet.
Birds in particular, I think, have magnetite.
And so high magnetic stuff can cause confusion and anxiety and all kinds of things. But it was interesting because later I found out my son worked there, and indeed I was correct. They had buried a bunch of very large magnets, enough that they made an anomaly that could be tested flying over their location so that they could have, like, credibility to there being more than just illusory and, perspective being all off and stuff like that. But anyway, it was interesting. Michael says, do you both think that we can contact whomever we want? As for me, it would be Mr. Crowley.
Well, yeah, I do, within certain restrictions. I mean, I don't know how it would affect things, but I'm pretty sure, for example, that Crowley took some oaths to continue working as like a secret master after his death kind of thing. I don't know if that actually has any validity or not, for sure, with respect to him in particular. But in general, yeah, it's possible. There's some aspects of necromancy that can be brought in there. it would be recommended to make sure that you're clairvoyant enough, or to bring up your clairvoyance enough that you can discern the difference, whether it's one of the things that can happen is astral shells get left behind. And those can be, if somebody tries to contact the person, and they might get a hold of the astral shell that's left behind after the spirit has left it, and be confused and think that's actually the person. But my understanding is that yes, you can pretty much contact anybody, but it's going to, again, depend on how advanced they were. If they were advanced like Barden or something, they could easily prevent contact or become invisible to scrying so you couldn't see them. So I think as a general statement, yes.
And I think that's true as well. The main problem is the clarity of the person who's doing it. And there are certainly plenty of spirits out there who, given an opportunity, will pretend to be whoever it is you're looking for. So that's another thing, is like your energy has to be pretty clear as well as discerning.
And by the way, there's a funny thing I read. I think it was, what was the woman who was with Crowley's stuff? The witch?
The one who drew the pictures? No, I don't know.
Well,
I'm drawing a blank.
Okay, anyway, where was I going with this?
They were talking about pretending to be someone you're not in a spirit form.
No. I'm sorry, I lost it. There was something I wanted to say, but I'm going to have to wait till it bubbles back up into my brain now.
Okay. That's fine.
I got distracted by trying to figure out who it was, but it's a woman that she took, a lot of Crowley's stuff went into the Book of Shadows and stuff. I think Doreen Valiente was the name I was trying to think of.
Now that was Gardner's high priestess. And they were involved with, Gardner was involved with Crowley, so.
Yeah, and she met him and such.
Yeah.
But I just don't remember what I was going to say now. Sorry, I lost it.
Vanessa V says, thank you.
Oh, I remember, sorry. It was just a little funny story. They were doing a, I think it was them. No, because they were around when Crowley was alive. Anyway, one of the witches that were influenced by him was doing a seance and trying to get him through a Ouija board. And they asked him, will you come through the Ouija board and talk to us? He was like, sure. And then they asked him a stupid question, how will you come through the Ouija board? He said, ask first. So I don't know if they really contacted him, but it sounds like something he might have said.
Yeah, it does sound like him. Moonfire Dawn says, it's like a fireside chat, a witchy powwow.
That's right.
That's what it is.
Yep.
Michael says, I mean that we can call out to whomever and possibly get an intelligent response.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, like we said, it depends upon where your own abilities lie and your ability to be clear and get actual information instead of your own subconscious coming out to give you what it thinks you want.
But I think it is possible. It's a complicated subject. I do well in the West. We hate the idea of guru worship, but I do a thing of trying to contact higher persons who had higher states of consciousness than I do, and get in contact with them and bring down some of those states of consciousness. And I think it works. I have noticed sometimes that if I'm focusing on an Indian guru, I start unconsciously making like Hindu gestures and things, like the namaste and the hands together and bowing. Yeah, and that all comes from the person I'm focusing on, so I'm pretty sure I'm getting legitimate results. You can focus on people like that and bring higher forces and things in for sure. And I try to do that pretty often.
So Jennifer S. says, what are some crystals that can soothe anxiety? Well, there's a lot that can help in different ways, like amethyst, rose quartz, selenite. Um, Amethyst helps to clear the mind and is just a nice
I'd say it's
crystal.
probably the better one of the better ones for that.
Rose quartz is more for emotions, soothing the heart and the feelings, the emotions and stuff. Selenite is good for clearing out all kinds of things inside of you, things that might be causing the anxiety. It brings in that higher vibration of light energy, and it's also good for getting rid of inflammation. So I use my piece of selenite if I have an inflammation in my body, and just like use the wand of selenite that I have and brush it down in a way, and it works really well for that, which is quite a surprise. But whatever works for you. Vanessa V says, a friend of my mom gives magnet therapy and I tried it. I didn't feel anything, but I don't know if it's because it didn't work or just because lately I don't feel much energetically. Yeah, sometimes we don't know. Could be just not something that's working well for you. Michael says, didn't know that about Mr. Crowley. I had no idea. Astral shell. I have so much energy work to do. Thank you both so much. It's okay, Ian. I'm the same way. Laugh out loud. Love Crowley. That's what I'm trying to do.
Cool.
Awesome. We are now caught up again. Yeah, so certainly life is interesting. There's always something. Arcane says, honestly, I wish there were more occultists who were interested in telekinesis. It's not as impossible as a lot of people think.
I don't think it's impossible myself, for what it's worth. I haven't attempted it, but yeah.
I've been in situations where it's happened to people. I've met people that it's happened to. Certainly poltergeist activity is one of the more documented cases of humans moving objects without knowing they're moving objects with their mind.
Barton ends up in his books giving a lot of different ways telekinesis can be accomplished. He doesn't focus on it specifically, but he kind of mentions it in passing in a bunch of different areas and explains exactly how that type of stuff can come about.
I have objects appear and disappear around me throughout my life, which is interesting, especially when they appear in such a way that everyone sees them appearing in the middle of the room and falling on the floor. Apparently my daughter still talks about that. Ashley and I were having a discussion about that the other day.
Well, that one that Vandermeer saw where they just kept having what was a safety pin, like,
oh yeah,
drop out of the air.
Just into a jar. They put a jar to catch them. It's like
craziness. Yep, they had a whole jar full of them that had just dropped out of the air. No explanation.
Yep. I think they were coming from a factory somewhere, and there was a mini black hole in the factory, and it was a wormhole that went to that spot in that house and popped out of the air and just kept falling every so often. It would hit one, and it would go boof like that. Arcane says, Barden's teachings will take you a long time to get it.
That's true. Barden's books are set up as a course of initiation. You should to start from the beginning and go through and become a true initiate. So some of the things will take a while to get to if you're really following a system of development.
Joy says, malachite, a green stone, helps me when the anxiety fear is intense. Yeah, I like malachite too. Pep says, experienced what Siofra mentioned, moved objects, and took a while to realize I'm moving them. Arcane says, but you will be more well-rounded as a magician in just about every area.
I agree.
Absolutely. And, being well-rounded seems to be, balanced and complete seems to be a good goal, in my opinion. I mean, you can get a one-trick pony who can do all kinds of stuff, but then they might be completely insane in every other way. And how useful is that?
That's
they
true.
can suddenly manifest a bunch of stuff, but then they don't know what they're doing.
A lot of times those things come up because of an imbalance.
Exactly.
If you have an imbalance and you've got way excess fire in your system, then that's how you're going to be, and that's what you're going to work best with is the fire, but what you need is the water. So,
and a lot of times when people are first getting into this as a path, they go for what they think of as their strength, which would be the easiest thing that they can do. That's their natural gift. But then the farther along you get, the more balanced you want to become if you're going to sustain things. And when people start to go through the process of trying to balance themselves, then it seems as if their gifts disappear because they're bringing
They're
in
actually
other things
fixing those excesses and imbalances. And,
right.
Yeah.
And until they get balanced again, then it's not the same.
Then you can learn it properly. Then you can do it properly and not have anybody who pushes on one of those. I'm going to back up slightly. There are things that are natural talents that you bring over from your next life. So, but if it's because of an imbalance and then you only focus on that one thing, like say you had an excess of fire and you're so good with the fire element, that's all you focus on, it's going to end up with illness of some sort, whether it be mental, astral, or physical, because you're exaggerating your imbalance. So if it's because of an imbalance, you're going to make things way worse by following it up. If it's a natural talent, then you won't. So that's anyway. Sorry. Don't want to go too deep into Barden's stuff because that's part of his system is figuring that out, and that's all in his books. But I'm not trying to be.
But that's not just in his system. That's
Right.
just something that is
Right.
out there for most people. I mean, on the forums and stuff like that, everybody keeps going like, what element are you? And it always annoys me whenever I see it because everyone goes with whatever sign they were born under. So I'm a Capricorn, so I'm an earth element. You are a Virgo, so then you're also an earth element, but that denies all the other aspects of how we're put together and that we're all 5 elements. We're not one. And balance is always going to be more powerful in the end, even if it's not as instantaneously showy. Being single focused.
Yeah, so I don't want to be a Barden pusher on our site. I mean, he's my favorite author, so there's no doubt about that, but
So Arcane says if you focus on TK only, you can start moving small things in a few months for most people. Well, yes.
You missed Michael's question.
Oh, is it a bad idea to do the LBRP in my bedroom as far as energy goes?
I would say no.
I would say no.
Absolutely not.
Seems like a good place actually to do it because then you're all clear before you go to sleep.
Yeah.
And you've cleared stuff out of your bedroom where you're going to be unconscious. And when you're unconscious, you're more vulnerable to whatever the heck might be going on. So.
Yeah, I agree. Unless you're, if you're doing it properly, yeah, I'd say do it. I did it in my bedroom for a long time when I was doing it twice a day for a couple of years.
And I think that there's a lot of that information or misinformation out there that you shouldn't have an altar in your room, you shouldn't have a mirror in your room. I mean, there's just so many weird ideas that are out there, and they may be good or bad for some people, but they're certainly not a universal truth of any kind. I mean, my bedroom is a temple for me when I go to bed at night, and I have all my altars in there. It's just like this room here is a temple for both of us. And Ian has similar stuff in his room. And it depends on your personality, I guess, as to whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I find it comforting.
Yeah, I'd say unless it keeps you up energetically, that would be a good thing. Get your bedroom all protected and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moonfire says Barden's books are super thorough. I'm so close to the end of book 1, but don't feel near finished because of how much he covers in one page. You said so, Ian, but wow. Michael says, I learned so much here. I thought so too. Thank you both so much. You're welcome. I mean, that's the thing, is like, these perceived rules of danger. It's like there's so many danger rules out there.
Yeah, that's the
thing.
Like,
no.
I had that kind of thing when I was getting going on it until you figure it out and have enough experience to start getting a feel for some of these things. I mean, I worried about all kinds of stuff that's not worth mentioning here, but yeah, exactly the same type of thing because you just don't know till you get going into it.
Yep. And we've all got different things to work through. Well, if you haven't watched the video on my shamanic dismemberment, that gives you a good idea of what can happen when things go really wrong. And happen at the wrong time and without planning. It's a miracle I'm here at all, considering what I went through with that. And yeah, that was actually one of the things I didn't mention when I was talking about true will and willpower and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know how I managed, but I think willpower was the key. What did you just do? Did you snap your arm? Apparently he snapped his arm, his wrist. Arcane says, I have to go see that. Oh yeah, it's a when they talk about crossing the abyss and so forth, that's what that was. That's the real thing. It's complete dissolution of the ego structure, and you never feel or think the same after it's over if you manage to put yourself back together. And Ashley and I were talking about that as well. So
yeah, well, it's an interesting thing. I guess I don't have anything to add to that. Sorry.
Arcane says, I have to go see that. Are Barton's books easy to find? And Michael says, yes, Vanessa, Amazon. And this is true.
They're
not cheap.
The actual books are a little bit expensive, but
you might be able to get them on Kindle or something like that. Moonfire Dawn says she heard that pop.
Yeah. Oh.
That was quite expensive. Like, woo! Michael says willpower seems to be key in practice. Yep. Yes. That's definitely a part of the whole thing. There's no doubt about it. And using your, will to focus through all the stuff that we get tossed at us constantly, figure out which way we're going to go. Sometimes will is the only thing that helps us to determine a path to go through all that stuff and get to the other side. I mean, I'm fortunate. I've never been addicted to a substance, and part of that is my willpower. And I don't take credit for it. It's just somehow I had that in me when it started. I came close more than once becoming addicted, but then I could see what was happening, and then I would stop doing the activity completely. And a lot of people struggle with that. And it's a terrible thing. My granddaughter struggles with it, and so it doesn't mean that I think I'm great and better than anybody else. Yeah. I just am lucky that I haven't had that particular experience.
Well, yeah, well, some people tend to have an addictive type of personality too, and I just seem to not. I never tried to not become addicted to anything. I just didn't accept tobacco, which I quit many years back. I got addicted to it on purpose, kind of. I was about 14, and I thought it was cool. With tobacco, and that's how I got started.
That was like a protection device for you,
wasn't it? Yeah, I'd be tough. I'd take Copenhagen and stick a big chew in my lip, because it was with a bunch of really little tiny school, little tiny town, lots of mean kids kind of thing. So that made me seem tougher, so I didn't get harassed as much.
So Michael says, I get the book so we can pass on our practice to other generations. Arcane says, is there anything about the paranormal you find hard to believe? Yes, I'm sure there's lots of things. I mean, okay, so I have a hard time believing in shape-shifting in general, werewolves, and that kind of thing, because it doesn't seem to follow along any science and physics and that sort of stuff. Vampires, the same kind of thing, the traditional type of vampires, although psychic vampires I completely believe in. I don't know about cryptids because by their nature they're elusive and hard to define, and we have this tendency to create shapes out of things that may not actually be real to make them look recognizable, and I know I do that all the time. So I have certain if something happens to me and I'm there, then I know what's taking place, and I have complete information about the circumstances. If it's happening to someone else, especially on a TV show, I'm fairly skeptical because I know most of those are faked to start with, and they're there for entertainment purposes only. the plethora of doorways to hell that there are across this country, according to the TV shows, I find quite remarkable and annoying as well. And then, when people are in the field and they have a very specific religious bias, I don't trust anything that they see or say as being accurate because they have such a lens that's easy for me to identify. So finding information about things that's not filtered through that kind of a personality lens
Right.
is very difficult. And so I try to have a healthy skepticism in everything, even the experiences that I'm having. I keep a healthy skepticism, and I try to make sure I'm not jumping to a conclusion based on a story someone told me. So I guess that answers that question.
Yeah, well, that's maintaining that certain amount of skepticism. One thing that I would add to that, just in general, I'm going to tout Barden again, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make this a Barden fan club today, but if I have a technical mind, I know electronics and things, I'm very good with technical stuff, and what I find with Barden's material is it all makes perfect sense from like a technical or like an engineering standpoint. Everything weaves together with no contradictions. I found one or two slight contradictions, but I honestly think in my versions, I have some old versions of Barden's work, that they're translation problems. Yeah. Because it was translated from Czech or whatever these, German or whatever it was, So
Michael says, anything that makes me feel good, I get addicted to. I have that personality. And me too, Ian, on tobacco. Arcane says, wow, I felt you were going to say that. Yeah, I'm having a big deja vu right now. Michael says, great question, Arcane.
I am kind of addicted to listening to music, though, and that's not a physical addiction at all, but I would really miss it.
Well, there's, addiction is something that, a definition of an addiction is something that's bad for you because it keeps you from being able to do anything else but that thing.
Right.
And so listening to music, unless that's all you can do and you're not even going to go to the bathroom.
I end up spending an inordinate
I think you're okay.
I end up spending a ridiculous amount of time fussing with things on building my audio equipment.
Drumwitch says, have you used water-based plant to try to astral travel, or what's your experience with astral travel? Astral travel just kind of happens to me on a random basis. I haven't actually used a plant to try and help me astral
travel. Not a bad
travel.
idea, though. A water-based plant should generally,
yeah,
figure out what plants are associated with water.
I was actually thinking about that the other night, and thinking about how many times I can remember being out of my body and seeing other things and stuff like that. But
cucumbers are pretty watery.
Yeah, yeah. I'd say they are pretty watery. Eat a cucumber and go on an astral trip. Watch out, salads, here we come. So Michael says, does it make you cringe and laugh at paranormal investigators who run when they see any kind of pentagram? It's annoying as hell, yes. And I'm like, they don't know what it means. They're immediate. It must be satanic. It's like, and the devil's got to be involved in this. And I'm like, really? I thought we had done a better job at educating the public about what we're doing and what the pentagram means and where it comes from, to not have people immediately jump to a conclusion that that's what's happening here. But yes, that story I was talking about, that the house up in Saskatchewan, I tried to put a pentagram on the floor in the attic, and I miscalculated. It ended up with the Star of David instead. But apparently, I don't know what happened. No one could cover it up. They tried painting over that thing, and they'd paint over it and would come back over and over again, and they were pretty sure it was demonic. So I found that out years later when I was in the neighborhood in Regina, and that was the year that my kids were kidnapped by their father. And yeah, I was just sort of like, really? That's what you think was going on there? Yeah, I'm the one who painted it, but I wasn't going to tell them that. I could just see the pitchforks coming out. Wow. But yeah, it's interesting. Drumwitch says, do you think there's a curse to have people hate you for no reason? I think that they think they have a reason, but they don't have a reason. They just hate anything that's different. So I don't know. I think it's just the lack of clarity in the consciousness, lack of consciousness, that they just like target certain types in their head. So I don't think it's a curse.
Well, maybe they're talking about an actual curse, though. Is there a curse?
That someone could put a curse on you and make people hate you for no reason?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I would say...
Possibly.
I would say, yeah, you could. And especially with some...
Like a negative glamour?
Yes. Or something like creating a particular type of elemental or something to come around you and cause that effect to irritate everybody who gets around you. You know, depending, or how, like they do it like in Santeria or something, and yeah. Probably not so much Santeria because they're mostly white based, but white is in white and black magic, you know, not, I mean, they're not negative. Yeah. They're not evil.
Words.
Words, yes.
Finding the right words.
But some of the darker arts, I'm sure you could do that.
But if you were a really good witch, you could probably dispel it rather easily. I mean, that's the thing about curses. They only work if you let them, in my opinion.
Bye, Violet Star.
So, Arcane says, when you have a chance, look into Ernst Vetter.
I can do that.
Michael says, music makes my spirit dance. Me too. Drumwitch says, lettuce, another...
For the right watery plant.
Another water-based plant.
Yep.
Catherine says, I was staying at a place that had a gate to hell open up, and my body's reaction was to void my bowels and bladder and go into a grand mal seizure. I do remember it. I won't go back there.
No kidding.
Well, it sounds like something nasty was happening there for sure. I don't know if it was really a gate to hell, but some negative stuff happening for sure there. Medusa Fire says watermelon and cucumber are from the same plant family. Cool. Michael says especially Stevie Nicks.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And Christine McVie, she's the one that got me. I love her voice, especially on all the Fleetwood Mac stuff. Her solo stuff wasn't as, I didn't find so interesting, but the Fleetwood Mac stuff, she has the best voice. Sorry, I just couldn't resist saying that.
Michael said, laugh out loud. It is annoying. That star seems to be powerful. It was, apparently. Violet says, I have to go. Ian already said goodbye. So, talk to you again later. Michael says, does the witch's ball protect from those curses, or witch's bottle? Well, I think witch's bottles are more to protect you from negative energy coming into your house. But it might also work on that other level. Because that's the whole point of the witch's bottle, is the protection. Yeah. It's got the pins and needles and whatnot in there, so that anything that comes around your space, so if they come through the ether, they're coming around your space. So I would think that the witch's bottle would be good for that as well. I just made a bunch of them, right? Yeah. I got to get them up on my site. I sold one.
And of course, always those type of things work better the more powerful you can get them charged.
Michael says, gotcha on the curses. Vanessa V says, the indigenous here have a practice where they merge their consciousness with that of an animal. So they see what the animal sees, for example. That's the closest thing to real shapeshifting that I've heard of. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and that I believe in completely. I mean, that's a different kind of thing. When I first saw Beastmaster, I thought, well, of course. That's something people can do. And even though it was a movie...
I had a kitty cat that I really loved and focused on making contact with her consciousness for a long time until finally I did. And it was a great shock because cat consciousness is nothing like human.
No, very alien.
Yep, the image of herself was very different, very alien from what I perceived as this cuddly, sweet kitty, you know? So, yep. Well, that's what's neat, in a way, is that shock.
That
of
was
contact.
validity. That validates it.
Yeah, that validates it when you get that big shock because it was so unexpected, you know. That's the kind of validation, something you didn't expect at all comes through.
That's the thing I find interesting about the paranormal investigations I've been on, too. I've never gotten anything I expected to get. It was always something different, which I considered a good sign. Because if I always knew it was going to happen and I walked in and everything was exactly how I thought it should be and would be and so forth, then I would be pretty confident that I was making it up in my own head. The fact that it's not what you expect seems to be, makes it more real. So,
Agreed.
Drumwitch says, have you worked with Scotch thistle? Not in particular. Michael says, gotcha, Siofra, what's the most powerful way to charge the witch's bottle? Intention? Well, yeah, but it's when I putting them together, there's like every part of the witch's bottle represents something else. So the open safety pins, the needles and the pins are there for poking and stabbing anything that comes through that's not supposed to be there. The rosemary and sage that I added to it are protection herbs for the home and for whoever's bottle it is. The 4 Thieves vinegar that I made that I put in it is another component of it. Some bottles use wine, but I like the idea of the 4 Thieves vinegar because it's a more complete formulation, using all the hot spices and stuff like that to make. And so it's not just your intention, but it's also your association with the items that you're using and your connection to what that means energetically on the other planes. That adds to what you're trying to do. So if you intended to make a protection bottle and you used a fluffy little toy with no sharp edges to it, it would be possible, but it would be much more difficult.
Well, yeah.
So
for sure.
So intention is one factor,
but also willpower, and you put your intention in it and you focus on it becoming the very protection you want, very powerful, and you focus on it and put that in there multiple times. It's more and more powerful to protect you, and each time you do it, you should try to imagine it as being more powerful than the previous time, and you can build up quite a charge over time that way.
Michael says, love the kitties. Arcane says, yes, shape-shifting is the hardest for most people to believe. Well, although we did see it happen in front of us once.
Well, that was it. We don't know if
but
that
we
was
don't
a
know
glamour
for sure
or
exactly what that was.
I think it was a glamour myself.
Michael says, have you ever thought of a paranormal class? Well, if we were going to do a paranormal class, I'd probably want to do it in a different format than on YouTube, because I would like to see people and have a more face-to-face kind of conversation. But that's a possibility on Facebook. Through Messenger, you can have multiple people on at the same time.
Yeah.
And Zoom gives you that, like, you got 40 minutes and then you're cut off completely.
So what's the maximum people you can have?
On Facebook? I don't know. I'll have to ask I'll check into it and see. But that's a possibility that we could do something like that, and that could be entertaining and interesting. Wouldn't be able to record it, I don't think, unless there's some other software we could use, but...
Oh, I'm sure there is.
Yeah. So Tanya says, my partner and I have been sick for a few weeks now. What incantations, crystals, and potions magic do you recommend for cleansing, health, and healing? Well, you can do basic stuff like trying to put your illness in water and pouring it out, putting your illness in a rock and throwing it out. As far as that kind of thing goes, someone mentioned the healing candle earlier, doing energy work, Reiki on each other, using selenite to bring in the healing energy, doing meditation. The healing chant that we have up on the site with the tree meditation can help with that as well, because then you're doing something specific to visualize your body healing and putting that healing energy throughout your system. So that might also be helpful. Medusa says, my daughter always says that if she could choose one superpower, it would be shapeshifting.
Yep.
Michael says, gotcha, Siofra. Will blood and semen help? Please excuse me, everyone, if I'm being rude in any way. That will make it specific to you, and that identifies it as your bottle.
Yeah. So, in general, for your part of the charging, yes, it will help. A drop of your blood in there will help make it a good fluid condenser and associated with you, so it'll be easier to charge up
Yeah.
that way for you.
But it's not necessary as far as
Right.
the whole process is concerned, but it can definitely
Yeah,
be useful.
if I was making a witch's bottle just for my own use, I definitely would.
As for the household, though, then
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, that would be if it's your own use purposes, yeah.
So Medusa says, what about the shapeshifters of Native American lore, the ones that still people steal people's skin? Sorry to get creepy. Well, I mean, there's stories about that kind of stuff in all cultures, so I'm not sure what I think about them.
Yeah, I know that, shape-shifting is possible mentally and astrally. My opinion is still neutral on whether people can actually do that physically. I think it's maybe technically feasible, but I don't think you'd find much of it going on. It'd be so rare.
Michael says, awesome, thank you both for considering the paranormal class. You're welcome. We can talk about it maybe on Facebook. Cool. Tanya says, thank you, great suggestions. Moonfire Dawn says, chamomile is a good fluid condenser, so I'm charging tea with healing energy for my throat. If you have a sore throat, I have an herb for you to buy and use, which I've used over the years. Red clover blossoms, and you want to simmer it for 20 minutes. It's one of the only flowers that you simmer in order to get the actual property out of it that you want. And you can even swallow that particular tea if you have strep throat. It's so soothing to the throat. It's actually quite remarkable. Unless, of course, you're allergic to red clover, in which case don't use it. Michael said, is it okay to put both bottles near each other, personal and household? I don't see why not.
Yeah, it should be fine, yeah.
I mean, the witch's bottle is sort of almost a universal kind of a thing. They have found it in houses all around the country. I mean, if you find a shoe that's filled with broken glass and needles and things like that, that's a form of what we call a witch's bottle. It's like a household protection kind of a thing. If you find one buried in your yard, just leave it because it's there to protect the people on the property. And a lot of times people find them and they think, oh my God, there's someone put a curse on my land or something like that. But it seems to cross religious lines, and it's kind of an interesting thing in and of itself because of that.
All those things have natural tendencies and natural energies that come from all kinds of things. So yes, there's definitely something, even without charging them, if you get the correspondences right, you've got a certain amount of that energy that you want anyway.
So Tanya says, oh, thank you, Moonfire. Got some chamomile. We'll have to get some red clover. Arcane says, well, shape-shifting is what I would call big magic. It's got the term from an occultist blogger, along with flying, teleportation, etc. From what I've heard, it hurts like hell. Well, if you could do it, I'm imagining that it would hurt like hell. I mean, I've had my face changed for other people when I was channeling, and in that particular state, people would see my face completely change, sometimes sexes, sometimes size and facial features and so forth, but that would be more of a clairvoyant vision, I think. Although I did seem to have a tendency to be able to make myself look like whatever it was someone thought I should look like in a crisis.
Well, and if you're really, depends, you're not the type of medium that, like, gets out completely and just lets the other person take you over completely.
Well, right, I'm not a trance medium.
But if you were, I'm sure just by having a totally different personality for that amount of time, your face could easily look completely different.
Yeah.
And even just because of facial gestures and things like that, and the way,
the way she speaks, the cadence of my voice, everything.
The way you speak, your gestures, the way your eyes open and close, and you grimace and smile and what have you, and all that stuff changes.
Yep. So Tanya says, I actually have red clover extract. Didn't know it helps with sore throats. Well, hopefully they did it the right way. I'm always suspicious. Because sometimes, they have red clover tea you can buy too, but just putting it in a tea and simmering it or like steeping it for 5 minutes is not going to give you the same effect as simmering it for 20. and it does make a difference. My daughter had impetigo and actually made put it in a spice bottle and sent it with her to her daycare that she was at, and had them put it on every 2 hours, and it actually got rid of it within about a day, which is pretty fast. So it's very effective. That's from Jethro Kloss's book Back to Eden. So if you want to explore more on the herbal side, I recommend that book, because he had his own clinic and so forth. Some very parochial attitudes, of course, but then again, he was a product of his times when it came to that. Okay, so Vanessa V says, I've heard of witches' bottles that were found with hair and nails inside. What does that mean? Probably the same thing as the idea of putting in blood.
I'm sure. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, blood.
Maybe your own hair or something.
Hair and fingernails, they're definitely a connection.
Well, she didn't say fingernails.
She said nails.
Nails.
Well, yeah, nails.
Nails. Because
they
nails
also
are
use nails, right?
Commonly used for witches' bottles.
Regular nails.
Right, like you hammer in.
Hammer nails.
Yeah, anything sharp and pokey.
That's right, anything sharp and pokey. But my bottles are little, so nails didn't fit in there, so I got pins and needles instead.
Nails.
Michael says, awesome, thank you both so much. As far as the bottles go, should we draw a pentagram over T, calling on any of the elements? Over it, yes. That can work. And the ones I made, I put a pentagram on it. And I'm going to put them up on my Etsy site. I made a dozen or so.
Yeah,
I've got like 11 left.
Generally, that type of substance would be a fiery one with the vinegar and the nails and the hot spices and stuff. So if you wanted to increase that aspect, you could use a fire pentagram and give it some extra fieriness in there to get that stuff out.
I added a pentagram to my bottles to represent Mars, and did it on a red cord. I actually crocheted a red cord for the pentagram and wrapped it around the bottle. So I got my pictures I can now start to download and get up there.
So there's all kinds of things like that a person could do. If you're familiar with the hexagrams, you could do the hexagram of Mars over it and fill it full of Mars energy too. All those things would be appropriate. They're fiery and martial, so. Yeah.
I thought Mars was a pentagram, not a hexagram. Is there a hexagram too?
There's hexagrams of the planets.
Oh, okay.
Hexagrams for the planets and the pentagram for the elements and spirit. Each planet has its own hexagram.
I see. Okay. Good to know.
Golden Dawn system, basically.
I was just getting stuck over the pentagram and the symbol for Mars. Okay. Hexagram's not the same thing as just a symbol. Aha, gotcha. There's always much to learn.
Yeah, what determines a planet is the way you draw the hexagram. You start here and start there. You got two interlaced triangles, so which planet it appertains to depends on where you start, and then you've got the banishing and invoking hexagrams also.
So same as with the pentagram when you're going drawing towards an element, away from an element.
Works the same way, except it's planet.
But it's a planetary thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to have to get a diagram of that. Now I want to do that one. Now that I got the other one down, because, I suddenly decided one day I needed to learn why those things did that and started practicing them. So now I have a new project.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, there's two for spirit in the hexagrams. There's an active and passive.
Yeah, the same thing with
spirit.
the pentagram, but it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
That one never works. It's like spirit is everywhere, so.
I kind of agree, yeah.
But yeah. He says over it, yes. Arcane says, thank you guys for a great Sunday vid. You're welcome. Medusa Fire says, lots of good info on shapeshifting in the book Animal Speaks by Ted Andrews. Michael says, got you both on the pentagram, hexagram. Yep. Hey, that's what we like. Spontaneous conversations. This is how our life is. We're constantly doing it. This is the way we talk on a normal day.
Yeah, I have a unicursal hexagram that I was wearing occasionally, and one time my brother asked me what it was, and he got the funniest result, because it sounds like unicursal hexagram. It's going to hex somebody.
Universally.
Cursal and curse,
curses and hex them, and yes.
Yep. I wonder what happened to that. It should have it around somewhere.
That's a good question. Maybe it'll reappear now that we've thought about it, because we haven't thought about it in years.
Maybe so.
We thought it was fascinating that the universal hexagram is all over the show Supernatural. And now it's on the Winchesters, because that's the precursor to Supernatural. Right. The Men of Letters, that's their symbol. We're like, why did they choose that one?
Well, I don't know. I kind of suspect. I mean, they got Enochian and everything else in there. I suspect they have some contact with some people who have some association with Crowley or the OTO or something, advising them.
Bye,
they had
Joy.
to have somebody to give them all the information on Enochian and such.
So Michael says, have you two had any dealings with the Oddfellows group? I don't think so. That doesn't sound familiar. You stuck in there, Joy. You're there almost for the whole time, so congratulations and get well.
Blessed be, and thank you for chiming in.
Get well. But yes. I guess we are getting close.
Yeah.
5 minutes. That's enough time to answer one question, if we have one. So I guess, Michael, have you sent me a friend's request on my Facebook profile? If not, please do so now. Unless you're not on Facebook at all, which can happen. It's a crazy world out there.
Yes, it is.
Ah. Someone asked us about this room at one point and how big it is. I think it's like 16 feet by about 14 feet. It's not quite square. It's a little bit narrower this way than long.
Yeah, I think it was 18 feet, but I might be wrong too.
Oh.
2 feet doesn't make any difference.
It was, yeah.
It's irrelevant.
It's a good size room. Medusa says, any advice about the lesser banishing spell?
As in the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram?
Yeah, you need to be more specific.
Yeah.
Vanessa V says, so the witch's bottle does work even if you don't make it yourself? Well, yes, you can charge it up when you get it.
Yeah.
I've already sort of made it and charged it up.
Yeah.
But then you can say your own words over it.
Since it's made by a witch and the things already have the correct correspondences, so it works to a certain extent. But highly advised to add to that charge.
Yeah. Now Medusa's Fire says yes, lesser banishing of the pentagram. Any advice?
No, practice it. You'll find it gets more and more profound as you do it over time, and each time you do it, you learn more and more about the elements and all those different aspects. So it can be pretty profound if you actually get into it.
It's like everything else. Like the more you do it, the more layers you begin to comprehend and understand, and the deeper the effect becomes. That's why having a daily practice is a good idea, even if it's just a short and small.
Yeah, and you do it a lot, and you start realizing some of the things it's doing to you, and the fact that it's actually very, it's just thrown around now as a lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, but it's actually a very deep ritual that if you really get into it, it can do a lot of self-development for you.
So Michael says, not yet, I don't think. Not on there too much. We'll do for sure. Well, we want to have a paranormal class. We need to have a way to get a hold of you. So face-to-face as possible. Because YouTube doesn't allow me that. You can see me, but I can't see you. It's just, the way they have it set up. So we have to find other platforms.
Well, and this is for so you could have large amounts of people, You might be chatting to 5,000 people.
Could potentially. All right, then. Okay, I guess we're getting pretty close at this point. So if you have any questions, send me an email, shifersmagicalcove@gmail.com. And I'm open to answering questions as I get them. And several of you use that, or have me as a friend on Facebook and send me questions from time to time as well. And any way you contact me is fine, or as a comment here on one of our videos. So Yeah, the more I like questions and suggestions and so forth because it helps me to focus my knowledge and experience into something that someone else is interested in knowing more about. Because, we have these large amounts of data in our head and not always easy to access. Darlene says good night and blessed be, and
Well,
Arcane says thank you.
Well,
Vanessa
Arcane
V is
said
thank you guys.
Ernst is his paranormal teacher. He doesn't teach shape shifting, but just about everything else. He can actually teleport objects and levitate, but sometimes his students surpass him. So I have to check him out.
Okay, did you write him down or?
We can go back and get it from the chat thing, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Catherine says blessings. Michael says blessed be to all. Blessed be everybody.
Thank you all.
Have yourself a wonderful time. The next time we see you, we'll be that much closer to the winter solstice or the summer solstice, depending on where you live.
Cool. Well, thank you everybody for being here.
Yes.